Hey, this is Anney
and Samantha.
And welcome to Step On Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio.
And welcome back to, I guess this will be our part 2. I don't know if we were going to call it part 2, but our series, which is called Monday Mini, but specifically we're talking about what is happening with Roe v. Wade. Yes, it is a hot topic. To be very honest and let you see behind the curtains a little bit, we just finished the recent episode about adoption versus abortion. So I was like, you know what, can we come back so that I can take a minute to calm down? Because if you happen to listen to that one, you know that I was ramped up. And I still kind of am. We wanted to take a minute and do sort of a part 2 about what we can do or what we are doing to care for ourselves during really what feels like hostile time, and a hostile time in history, as someone who feels that people's bodies should be their own and that having autonomy over it is important. And when being threatened and being called commodities feels overwhelming, sometimes we have to take a step back. And we wanted to do that.
Right. And this one's kind of more of a free form, shall we say? Normally we have an outline, but this one we're just going to have a conversation. So I'm not entirely sure what we're going to talk about, but I'm going to go ahead and say the content warning.
Yes.
For just discussion around abortion, I'd say mental health and any of the things you can imagine sort of related to the abortion topic. I don't think we're going to go too in depth to anything, but totally understand.
Right.
If you're like, oh gosh, I cannot take this. And one of the reasons I say that is because, and I hate to even bring it up, but in 2016, when Trump was elected, it felt similar in that it was like you constantly have to tell yourself, in the face of misogyny, in the face of racism, in the face of sexism, in the face of homophobia, you constantly have to kind of like tell yourself that's wrong and I have value and I have worth. And then that happened. I was like, okay, well, it's like the system is telling me I don't though. And this feels kind of like another thing like that. And it was very disheartening when we kind of went through the brief and there was so much language from like the 1700s.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, do we remember what the 1700s were like? All right. Well, but since I guess we're kind of, being honest and it's grim and painful for a lot of us, but we're trying to put it more of a, I don't know if positive spin, but what we're doing to take care of ourselves. I will say that I had, because I've been in therapy and because I've been like practicing mindfulness and basically just checking in with myself and being like, okay, here's what we're dealing with. I'm not going to lie and say it's been easy by any means.
Right.
But I've had kind of things in place for when I have a really bad or dark moment. And that was nice. And I've also had conversations with you or with other friends of mine, close and, not as close, and with my family about it. And we're all angry about it. And so that was nice too, to just kind of like have this moment of real venting. And we're all scared and we're all angry and we're all talking about like things that we can do. One thing I went to do is I voted in the primaries here.
Yeah.
In Atlanta. And I know that, it's frustrating because we keep getting told to vote and we're like, well, it's still happening.
Right.
But it did feel good. It did feel good.
Right. And it is important. I know there's a lot of feeling of hopelessness because we do have the House, the Senate, and the president, but yet nothing is changing. I think this is where people have been talking about it. It's drastically changed the lines. It's not just one or the other. There's a whole level of spectrum. And even though we were really hoping to get a handle, this seems a little bit more centrist than was hoping for, especially when there seems to be no activity outside of sometimes getting money. And that is not what we need necessarily. People need money, don't get me wrong, but we need to get at the root instead of just throwing Band-Aids. But yeah, we can't give up because it can get worse. That's the other part to this is, if nothing else, that's what we see. And honestly, I know there's a lot of back and forth and people have a lot of thoughts about the 2016 election, but we can't deny that that was part of why the Supreme Court is the way it is right now. So that is something to consider, not going beyond that because I think that's too heavy and I haven't researched enough to truly go there, but we know 3 of the Supreme Court justices came from that point in time, and 2 of them being some of the most extreme undereducated justices that we've seen, which is interesting. But yeah, I think that is still a big deal because we do need victory. And for Georgia, for us, we had a little bit of a change and we want to keep up that momentum, and we know we have a hard fight, and y'all, it's exhausting. I think people who understand who are from Atlanta, who are not either leading anymore, it just feels like a battle, feels like tug of war. It's exhausting. It is, but it feels like at least we're doing something. Perfect timing for therapy, going back to therapy. Yeah. Specifically, someone who is specializing as an adoptee, trauma services. So that's nice. For me, yeah, having friends, having a lot of changes, it's a lot. But having these friends and support groups have been amazing. Giving that therapy has been amazing. Being able to do this type of episodes and shows and being uninhibited has been a delight. Where I think if I was still working with the government and the agencies, I wasn't able to do anything. So this has been a really nice delight to be able to express what is happening and the trauma. And I'm sorry I'm trauma dumping on y'all, but just being able to do that has been a different point of view. Being able to talk to a lot of people. I recently did an episode with some of our fellow podcasters on a different show. It was really nice to commiserate with them as well. Just having allies throughout to come through. But, you know, and we're going to talk about this in an episode coming up, but also seeing the fighters who kind of like the Jane Collective, which is what Sminty has talked about before, as well as that's the episode I did in the other podcast, as well as on our special project that we keep hinting at. But it's really nice to see people coming together to become the underground network for that. And I'm excited to talk about that because it's a little hope and glimmer in knowing that we're not going to idly sit by. So that is nice to see overall. But yeah, there's a lot that feels overwhelming. So for you, the listener, we're asking, how are you? Very, very loaded question. Yeah. How have you been able to handle your time? What have you been doing to not only give yourself some time and space? Can you give us advice as well? Yeah, always. I know a lot of us feel this way, and there's a lot of intersections within a thing like this. But I remember that day where I was like, the news broke, and I'm like, okay, now this is what, okay. I gotta deal with this now. And I'm sure a lot of people feel like that. And I would love, if you have any advice or any hope or any stories you'd like to share, because that's also, hearing from you is always such a delight. And you do provide perspectives that we might not have. So please, and we would love to see it. And also, let's just go off topic. Annie, tell me something that is giving you joy right now. Not right now, but like now, for a while, a little while, whatever. Okay. Well, it's obviously fan fiction. I will say, I think I mentioned it previously, but I did get to finally, after 2 years of pandemic, go see my long-awaited Return of the Jedi concert. Yay! And it was awesome, listeners. This is a thing, they do it at like a bunch of cities, but the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra plays the score as the movie is playing. So they're playing in front of you live while you watch the movie. And it was so cool. It was so cool.
I got to see A New Hope in theaters. That was awesome. And then I have 2 friends who are playing my very favorite game, but a very depressing game, Last of Us 2. And they are sending me regular updates, and they're so angry at me, and I love it. I am relishing in their tears.
That's amazing.
Yes. So what about you?
Fantastic. Let me take a minute, because I know there's things. So things that are bringing me joy is I am getting excited. Listeners, you know, I am in the process of buying a house. So I am very close to getting that done. It's also mixed with a lot of stress and anxiety, because I'm always fearful that something's going to go wrong. But this is such a big step for me too. Also, yeah, this is a big step. Like, this is something huge that I've not done in a long time, if ever. So there's joy and panic at the same time for me. You know, this also, don't want to go into what's happening with the market and housing and how I hate the rental market. See, I get both. This is where I'm too much of a Libra. I have to balance everything out. I can't just enjoy something. But yeah, so coming on to being a homeowner, getting to the point of establishing my own spot, it's really nice. My partner is super excited. I'm not very creative, so he's like, "Let's do this to this and this," and I'm like, "That sounds like a lot of work. I don't want to." Also, like, then you can do it type of conversations. Right. But I want to be settled, and I'm excited about being settled for a minute. Yeah. The other joy is pretending like I can travel soon. Maybe one day we can do that. Yeah. And yeah, being with friends. I still don't love going out because I'm still weary, and there's weird upsurge that no one's talking about with COVID. Not getting into that. But being able to see my friends, even though I haven't seen them for long, I finally got to see one of my good friends who is also in the house buying part of their lives. So that was fun to celebrate with them. Yeah, I got to see a few friends on and off. Like, a good friend of mine came in from Portland, got to see them. That was a joy. It's like being able to see people recently has been a nice moment. But yeah, so the small things. I'll report back to you when I'm actually moved into the house and tell you how I'm feeling then.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see what your soundscape is.
Oh yeah, well we've already got plans for my quote unquote office. Ooh. We shall see, right? But I didn't want to. I wanted to end on another positive in how we can support those organizations and people who are fighting for abortion access, because we think it's super important that we do put our actions and money and whatever we can in supporting outside of just voting. And yes, voting is important. I know it sounds trivial, and the bit of me who's like, no, give up, doomsday-ish, is important. And in the state of Georgia, for us, is very important because there's a lot of things happening. But also looking at organizations around the world, around the country, to see, we see Mexico coming in and be like, we'll help you out because they decriminalized abortion. And so they're like, we're here to help you out. Canada, same thing, like, we got you. There's an organization with pilots in airplanes who are helping fly people who need access for free to get them access. So that's always a joy to see. But if you're wondering where you can help, definitely go look at National Network of Abortion Funds. They will help you, lead you to whatever the organizations that needs the funding. They are a little more low-key than Planned Parenthood, which we love Planned Parenthood, but that's not necessarily where we need to focus. So look into specific areas around your area, especially if you're in one of the trigger states, which we already talked about previously, or in what would be called the red state, politically leaning, because those are the places that are up for likelihood for having an overall ban. So those are the organizations that we need to look at and really focus in on. It's actually better to give small amounts throughout rather than one large donation. So if that's something you're planning, maybe go ahead and go a little step further and do a pre-plan of when you want to send it, maybe for a couple of months instead, like $5 per, instead of doing $100. So just to keep on that note, also there are defense funds, which we will need. We know that. We've already seen people being arrested and charged with crimes, felony crimes as well. So those are really big things. And also this can lead to restricting voting access. And I think it's very strategic when you think about it. This same thing goes to anti-trans laws. So we know that Alabama just put in a law for trans youth healthcare and making it a felony. So that is something that we need to look at as well. And if you want to provide money for those defense funds, this is where we're going to, y'all, because we know Alabama has been the first one that went in with their miscarriage intended abortion law, where they arrested a woman who lost their fetus after being shot during a fight. And they blamed her and charged her with murder. And it wasn't until public outcry that went away. So in Texas, we know a woman, either, I can't remember if she actually had an abortion or had a miscarriage, but was charged with a crime. These are things that we're going to have to look at, especially in these types of laws, which is being pushed even harder, though they've been around, they've been trying for years, and now becoming more and more successful. That specific overruling is going to affect things like this. And this is what we need to look at. So not trying to be negative, but if you can help give money to defense funds and specific local funds, go local. Make sure you research them, make sure they are legitimate, because, there's just a lot of scams, unfortunately. But if you look at organizations like we just spoke about, you will be able to access actual legitimate organizations. In Atlanta, there's Sister Song, who works with healthcare and trans and all of those, and we love them. But make sure you are trying more and find out these strategies in order to see how better to do these types of donations, because it does matter how it's done, who it's done, and when it's done. So just research a little more, and keep up the fight. If you are a person who has been through an abortion and want to share your story, please let us know. We would love to talk about it, and we would love to be able to openly talk about how this does affect each and every one of us and why it's important that we talk about it.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And if you have, again, a story like that to share, or anything you'd like to add to this conversation, any organization you want us to shout out, or, let us know what you're doing to take care of yourself. You can email us. Our email is stuffmediamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Instagram at Stuff Mom Never Told You, or on Twitter at MomStuffPodcast. Thanks as always to our super producer, Christina.
Amazing. Thank you. You make me happy too.
Yes. And thanks to you for listening. Stuff Mom Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.